All right, obviously that discussion on the BBI and the bill cannot end in one night, and we'll keep looking at those provisions as we go along. But we want to move on to something that's also happened this week, and I want us to listen to a soundbite from DCI boss George Kinoti.
We have registered around 72 cases. The witnesses and all are here with us. Then we have run displacement. Those who are banished from the rightful place of enjoyment. We are going to the field, and soon we are going to see action from us. And in a very near future, sile tulikuwa tunasema kitambo, very soon.
So, Linus, I'll start with you on this one. I mean, like, it was so interesting seeing the DCI director coming out and almost out of nowhere, you would say, and no one really saw this coming. So he's saying he has had an avalanche of complaints from different people who feel threatened right now as a result of the heightened political temperatures in the country and that sort of thing. And he promised action, and obviously that kicked up a storm, which roped in even the president, I think 2 days later.
Right, Joe, and maybe we should listen to that reaction from the president just now.
Na mambo haya tumezika katika kaburi ya sahau. Kwa sababu ukijaribu kulete maneno hapa, wewe hujui ni shida gani. Anayo wengine hawafikiri. You don't think before you talk, you don't think before you act. Sisi wengine wetu tunajua maana ya amani. Na sisi tunataka kurekebisha zile shida, na turekebishe kwa njia ya kikatiba, kwa njia ya kisheria. Ndio Kenya isonge mbele na Wakenya wawe kitu kimoja.
So Joe, I don't know how many Kenyans buy what we've just seen. Unless we already have an expanded executive that is talking at cross purposes, it's very, very hard to believe that it is possible for a senior government officer as the DCI, a senior security officer, to conduct such a high-profile press conference on such a delicate issue as the post-election violence of 2007, an issue that saw the president and his deputy indicted and charged at the ICC. It's not really easy to believe that the two did not know what was going on. I don't think it is accurate that indeed somewhere in the top echelons of government they did not know what the DCI was talking about. But it's easy to see why the president would react that way. And what he has done basically is to throw the DCI director, George Kinoti, under the bus. Because how was the reaction to what Kinoti said? And we can see that reaction actually before you proceed, because we had reactions from quite a number of leaders who really basically just dismissed what Kinoti was saying and even pointed fingers at the president himself.
Are not worth reviving and weeping emotions, especially matters where communities have come together, forgiven one another, and moved on.
Did President Uhuru Kenyatta lie to Parliament by saying that those issues have been sorted? Do we believe the older President Uhuru Kenyatta or the current one that is supporting a DCI who is reopening a chapter that has been closed?
Kinoti and his masters only wish to cynically exploit the terrible traumas of PEV to anchor a diabolical and divisive political agenda.
And that is why we challenge the President that it is under your watch, Mr. President. The lives of leaders and Kenyans are in your hands. Take charge.
All right, so there we are. Linus, finish your point, because I saw Yvonne itching
to talk.
Yeah.
Okay. So the point I was making is there can't be this disjointed communication on security issues, which is what we have witnessed. How did the DCI end up with that press conference, which is about such a sensitive topic? The reactions that we have seen there just tell us there are these don't touch topics in Kenya. And one of them is post-election violence. Remember, the only time we ever faced post-election violence, and we've had post-election violence since 1992 coming this way, is when the ICC came in. Because locally, it's either too hot to handle or too convenient to lose.
And I mean, one would ask Yvonne, so if you're DCI Director George Kinoti, and assuming that, there are Kenyans who went there and say, hey, we feel threatened, there are people who are intimidating us or telling us all these things that give us memories of what has happened in the past. I mean, what does he do?
He would investigate first. And then give us the outcome of the investigation, and then take those files to the DCI, and then we would hear of prosecutions and charges being preferred against people who have been found, with a sufficient level of evidence. I found it very interesting that we have a press conference from the Director of Criminal Investigations, like, we will go, we will investigate. And it was a little bit all over the place. At some point, I don't know if he said or meant, and maybe you'll tell me around the table, that they went and they found mass graves. So I wasn't sure, is that like in the 2 weeks following the time that he said they received that? So I found it interesting because who is this?
Flashback scenes,
right?
Because
I wasn't quite sure which he meant. Is it now? Is it previously? And also, I mean, this is how you catch a thief or a criminal. You just go out and get the job done. So I found it very interesting. We don't hear from the DCI too often. So the fact that he stood up and actually gave us that. But then there are those reactions. So the president says, hayo mambo tulizika katika kaburi la sahau. Really? In what way? When was this done? By whom? Where are the victims themselves? And by the way, not just of the post-election violence of 2007, I wonder what the victims of the Wagala massacre would have to say. Tulizika katika kaburi la sahau, which one? Were there issues ever sorted out? There is also the issue of the fact that this president himself was handed that TGRC report. It is gathering dust. And I'll talk about this more in my take. But also, there's the issue of restorative justice. Some of the principles of which are reparations, forgiving one another, making amends, even making payments. It's about victims and perpetrators meeting, and perpetrators atoning for their sins and publicly confessing. And then there is all of that that's happening, at the same time. I don't know, I've been in this country since 2007 and I have not seen that happen. And all of these people, essentially, we're going back to 2013, right? Where these two sides of the political divide, then and now, as it would turn out, speak in one voice when it comes to the issue of post-election violence. In 2013, they shook hands as both ICC indictees and had a common enemy. And now again, despite the fact that they're on different sides of the political aisle, when this issue is mentioned, both of them again singing the same tune.
But there's something, and Jamila, probably you touch this as you speak. I mean, why is it so difficult to talk about this issue in Kenya? And is it an issue in the first place? Because it seems that the kaburi la sahau that the president talks about is really the pact that they had with the deputy president. Because apart from the ICC, that's just about the only thing that happened after that whole episode.
It's true, Joe, because I remember when the DCI boss, Mr. Kinoti, was asked why now. And he said that criminal cases are never really over. Haziishi kabisa. And the next day, after all the speeches and the reactions to what he had said, he sent in a statement saying that, we'll only look at cases that are pending, not ones that
fresh
had already
complaints.
Fresh complaints, exactly. Not the ones that had already been listened and all that. And I think this is something we asked each other when we were prepping for the show, is exactly how many people were actually prosecuted for post-election violence crimes locally in the country. And we couldn't come up with very many of those. And I think another issue that Yvonne has mentioned about the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission and issues about what people have went through in the country and the fact that the report was handed over in 2013. I remember I was reading somewhere that the TJRC collected over 40,000 statements and over 1,000 memoranda and went to over 35 places in this country. And they didn't just look at post-election violence of 2007. They started from 1963 and they looked at all those issues up to and including what happened in 2007. And the report was handed over to the president, and of course they were expecting, and you spoke about gathering dust, it's because apparently the National Assembly is supposed to be to consider the report first, which it hasn't done. Number one. Number two, I went to some of those sittings that the TJRC had, and I was lucky enough to go to Wajir, where the Wagala massacre in 1984 happened. And the people spoke a lot about what happened then and how people lost their lives. And something one of the Wazir said there that I keep remembering all these years later is that at least someone has, for the first time, come and asked us what happened. Tuelezeni nini ilifanyika. And I think in Nakuru also there was the same thing. Someone actually wants to know what happened to us, and they listened. That was very important to those people, and I'm sure that was replicated in different parts of the country, that finally someone wants to hear what happened to us. Because what the TJRC discovered was like, yes, the 2007 and 2008 post-election violence was triggered by this disputed election, but it was fueled by more deep-rooted problems.
Right.
And this was replicated, I think, from the violence that was seen throughout from the period that they looked at from 1993 to 2007, 2008. And they gave all a raft of recommendations, which again, Yvonne said, gathering dust
somewhere. And it was
somewhere.
based actually on what was called Agenda 4.
Agenda 4.
Yes.
Of the National Accord and all of these things.
Yep.
But Francis, I want to hear what your thoughts are about this, because this is an issue that keeps coming up. I mean, let's face it. Right now, all these people are saying it was sorted, kaburi la sahau, but the truth of the matter is that it is all very dependent on the state of the political relations of the leaders that reach that deal. Right now, there is some kind of tension between the president and his deputy, and the truth of the matter is that if, for whatever reason, there would be a complete rupture, that everybody goes their way, they might not be fighting, but the community relations there might not be what we are told they have been for the last 7 or so years, just because of how politics is played in this country. So when you see those MPs speak in the manner they did, including Governor Mandago, and then the president a day later speaking in the manner that he did, what's going on?
I am not very interested in what the politicians are saying. I'm more interested in what is the state of justice for the victims of post-election violence then, and any other violence that will occur in this country that is politically related. That is where the main focus is. Why do I say so? Because, unfortunately, political reconciliation in this country, reconciliation in this country is every so often at the political level, at the top level. But very few times do we hear what happens to reconciliation at the local level.
Absolutely.
Supporters of politician A and politician B, who were at loggerheads in the previous general election or previous general elections, now told that we have reconciled, so let's go on in 2013, 2017, and so on and so forth. And even in the current scenario, I looked at the people that were at the DCI headquarters, and I asked myself, now that this issue has raised such a political storm, what is the state of their justice? Now that this matter, definitely the president has said, imeziko katika kaburi la sahau. So if these people had a genuine concern, what becomes of their concern? On one hand. But at the same time, you see, when you fuse politics into justice, you have a very... we used to call it what in biology? The bloods that cannot mix. We used to call it what? Kizungu mingi, the one that we used to learn. It's an immiscible... It's very immiscible, you know? Yeah. If you want justice, pursue justice. If you want politics, pursue politics. Because if you try and mix the two, you will have a very potent mix. So I sympathize with the people who are at the DCI headquarters, because much as probably they would have a case, that case is over because of the politics that have come up, number one. And number two, we are not strangers to this discussion. We were here in 2007 when post-election violence erupted in this country. And anyone who is interested in knowing what happened, we have volumes and volumes of documents that have detailed exactly what happened. We have the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights report. We have the Waki report. You know, the Waki team moved around the country. I remember I covered those proceedings in various parts of the country. We have the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission. So if you want to pursue justice, first of all, look at those documents. What do they contain? And it is not right for whatever purposes to, you know, introduce politics into such a sensitive matter, because it doesn't work very well with our country. But as Lina said, and I agree with you 100%, it is not possible that the DCI director staged such a function without the knowledge of the government. I wouldn't imagine that would have happened. If it did, I would be very, very, very surprised. But be it as it may, maybe the office of the DCI needs to be a little more careful that it doesn't get sucked into the politics of the day. Otherwise, people will start to question the independence and the apolitical nature of that office, especially on a matter as sensitive as security, because if you politicize that office, then it becomes very difficult to appear. Yeah.
And I think all of this just kind of underscores the fragility of pegging peace, community coexistence on individual politicians, because that is what we keep doing in the country, where there's a disputed election or there is whatever crisis, and then once the politicians kind of settled it at the top level, we think that everything is okay. But the truth of the matter is that if someone came and maybe killed your son or burnt your house or whatever, it might not really be sorted out by some
a handshake
two people.
Between two people.
You understand? Saying, oh, now it is all over, we have forgotten about it. There is a sense in which all these issues of truth, justice, and then reconciliation have not been sorted out, and it probably explains why these issues are such hot potato subjects. No one really wants to face them and deal with them the way that they ought to.
Joe, a quick rider. Look at the sequence of TJRC, or if you like it. First, it's truth. And the truth must be spoken. Have we dealt with the politically related violence truth? Unfortunately, in this country, we have not.
And sorry,
we haven't.
Francis, at that level, have we had people saying that, I'm sorry, I took your cattle, I stole this, I burnt down your home? Because that's what truth is.
Yeah.
It's about stating it openly. This is what I said, this is what I did. And all you have to do is see what happened in Rwanda with the Gashasha courts. So they took the highest perpetrators, and in South Africa as well. But it's about owning and taking responsibility for what you did, unlike just a mere glossing over general apology that, like what the president said in March of 2015, that I am sorry for all of those. But you're sorry for what exactly? And that needs to happen at a very local, granular level.
So first LK is truth. Let's, as a country, speak the truth about what we faced then and what we can face if we don't take care. Truth. And then let's discuss the question of justice. What is justice? It is not necessarily taking guys to court or taking them to prison. There's also, restorative justice. That I took your cow, I have been milking it, here it is, take your cow back. You had houses, rental houses somewhere, people occupied, they refused to pay rent, so please take back your houses. You had a parcel of land somewhere that was taken away, please take back your parcel of land. Once we have dealt with that restorative justice question, then now we reconcile. But the unfortunate thing is, I look at it as a wound. We have a wound called political violence, politically related violence, that we cover with a bandage. We never deal with the real issues, and it keeps festering. And that's why every 5 years, you will hear something about it, something related to it. And also when it is politically convenient. That is the unfortunate thing. And that's why I still sympathize with victims of post-election violence. Because as long as we continue with this scenario, justice for them will be a long shot.
You look at it, Francis, as a wound. I look at it more as a drip or even an injection that is occasionally administered by the politicians. Because what you're talking about, truth, reconciliation, is not possible unless it has political will from the top. The politicians who have been talking about reconciliation in this country, talking about reaching out and talking about restoring ethnic relations in this country, hold positions of political power. For heaven's sake, this government started with a handshake between two leaders from two communities that shed the most blood in the 2007-2008 violence. Have they moved from their handshake to actualizing the relations or improvement of relations between the ethnic communities? They haven't. In 2007-2008, and Francis, you covered those events, there was one event where President Mwai Kibaki and ODM leader Raila Odinga, under the prodding of the international community, they would go to Eldoret. There was a reconciliation meeting there, and then there's this quick flight to the border of Sotik and Kisii. Something hurried, just for the cameras and quickly done. My hunch is politicians in this country use ethnic animosity as a tool of mobilization. It is in their interest that it's not eliminated. Look at the rhetoric. Look at the mobilization. It's always about this community versus the other. Social media is in itself awash with that kind of rhetoric, short of having machetes there and bows and arrows. It is a very violent kind of undertone. And this is our culture, Joe. This is our... I don't know which regime will break it, because our skeletons, our closet is actually full with skeletons, and there's been no administration that has been genuine enough, courageous enough, willing enough to confront the issue of ethnic relations. And Francis, you are very right. What we see them do is to weaponize those relations. That's why those animosities. That's why it's so easy to see politics in the events of this week. It's very, very easy. If the Uhuru bromance was functioning, would that press conference have happened?
Not at all.
I don't think so.
Joe, two people have taught me some biology on Twitter, Jaramba Mwaneki and Wakihia. They're saying the blood immiscibility that I'm talking about is called agglutination. I think that is the correct one.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Wow. Okay, this is where we